Welcome day to 100, what? Welcome day to, what? Welcome to day 118. Or, hopefully 118. Or, conjure with my magic. So I see completely nothing that could backfire from saying this. Ever. Absolutely nothing. However, I was eating dinner and got a knock on the door. I looked out. It was a cop. Don't you love that? Remember, don't like those guys. Okay, anyways. No, seriously. Obviously, all cops are bastards. We all know this. But when a cop shows up, you fake chummy with them if they're gonna be chummy with you. You know, de-escalate the situation. He shows up. I don't know, 30s. White, obviously. Around here. White dude. And he shows up. He's like, listen, it's not 10, so it's not breaking any rules. Your dogs are not even outside, but I'm here to tell you, you have 13 complaints from a neighbor. A neighbor. And we're like, 13? He goes, yeah, have you ever talked to someone before? And we're like, yes. I have talked to 3 people, 3 cops. You being the third, but I know my siblings and my mom has talked to more. So I'd say 6 or 7, maybe 5. But I know of at least 5, I think. And over years, it started the second day after our neighbor moved in. And again, he said, a neighbor. And he's like, what neighbor is it? And I said, that neighbor. And he goes, yeah, it looks like you just have a typical neighborhood war. And I was like, okay. And he's like, I have dogs, they bark, just make sure they're not this. The rule, he said the rule is, and I heard 10 minutes after 10, 1 bark every minute for 10 minutes straight is against the rules. Never did that. Apparently out of 13, 0. One time they were barking, but we got them in before technically 10 minutes. But that was a freak thing. They had literally a raccoon up the tree, and we got them in right then. We just we took them in. And so I'm just like, 13? And he's like, yeah, just fair warning, because they keep stacking up, but we can't do anything. Like, you're not breaking the rules. So either you're going to get a kind of a pissy cop, and they're just going to write you up anyways because you have so many citations, even though you did nothing wrong 13 times. Meaning, they had cops sitting outside of our house for 10 minutes, 13 times. Just like, I don't want that. Okay, don't call the cops on me. So anyways, so the neighbor did that. And again, he said a neighbor, pointed the neighbor out. And obviously going to give you no details of the neighbor or anything. But he's just like, the moment they moved in, we're like, the moment they moved in, he started getting things. And the very first cop told them they cannot call the police unless we actively break the law. Obviously, we don't. I think constant noise can start at 6 in the morning. We're not letting our dog bark at 6 in the morning. So like we're extremely respectful. And they had a little kid, so we, instead of 10 o'clock, 10 o'clock, we brought it all the way up multiple hours earlier of like absolute no barking, not even for a minute. We were like, no. And then they called the cops on us at that point, we saw about 3 cops total. And we're like, what the hell, dude? So we're like, okay. And he's trying to cite the law. It's like, you're breaking the law. It's like, it's 8 o'clock. And they were barking a bit, but not even 10 minutes because we don't. That's annoying. That's annoying. And we're like, okay, well. And then we looked up the rules and we saw that it was 10 minutes after 10. Not 10 minutes after 10. 10 minutes full of noise after 10. And so we're like, well, what are we gonna do? So obviously still no ridiculous barking or anything. But it's just like, what? And the cop's like, okay, well, do they have a kid, like the kid with the bedtime? And they're like, is it out under like 1 year old or something? And I'm like, freaking no. It's not an older kid, it's a full grown kid though. I don't want to give specifications on a kid. Like, no, I'm not doing that. But I'm just like, no. And I don't know if they still even have a bedtime or anything. Like, I mean, maybe a bedtime. A lot of people have bedtimes, but I'm like, I don't know. And he's like, oh, okay. And but yeah, so anyway, so I'm like, I don't know. And he's like, I don't know, like, do you know what started it? And I'm just like, literally no idea. And but you're like, oh, well, that doesn't sound so bad. Yeah, again, we were super respectful, we still are. And but the cops had to call us before they called the cops, and they never do. Literally, I met them once, multiple, over 2.5 plus years ago. Minimally, I don't remember what year, but wasn't this year and wasn't last year. Like, it wasn't, yeah, it wasn't like the last, so it must have been 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, at least. So I'm like, I don't know what they look like, I don't know anything about them, nothing. But the very first time I ever did see him at all, even from a distance, he called me a lot of things, but one of them I'm gonna repeat is a heckin', okay, I'm not gonna repeat it completely, but I'm gonna call it a heckin' idiot and stuff like that, and I'm dumb, and I'm stupid, and blah blah, and it just kept going. What happened is we used to, years, and like when it got annoying, so we stopped doing it. We used to have a leash that in the front yard connecting to our like garage, well on our property, well in our property, in the garage, just to have a leash with our dog on it to just let him chill in the front. But he would get tangled, so he got tangled, and I was out there, and I needed to unhook him, and I was like hand on the collar and unhook him and untwist it, but it was too twisted and he wasn't moving, so I got my sister to help me untwist it, and he was like, you guys are idiots. So I was like, what? I'm waiting for my sister, just sitting there, and I'm just like, what? And he's like, you guys are idiots, you guys can't do simple things, and it just kept going. And I was like, okay, give it. I have not medically transitioned, but I think I cut my hair off. I think I had long hair at this point. So I then, 2.5 years ago, I met them again. He's like, I don't think I know you. And I'm just like, yeah, you do. He's like, no, are you friends with the people in this house? I'm like, no, I live there. And he goes, no, you don't. I'm like, yeah, I do. It's like, oh. And I'm like, yeah, and I was returning a package that was misdelivered, and it was before the pandemic and everything, obviously. So I just was walking over, and I'm like, no, this is your package. I live there. And he's like, I haven't seen you before, and I'm just like, flashback to you yelling at me, saying I'm an idiot. I'm like, yeah, no, we met. And he's like, oh, yeah. So I'm just like, I'm gonna just leave it at that. I don't care. So I left. The kid talked to me for a little bit. She was very excited. And I'm like, oh, cute. Love that. Bye. So I ditched. Because I didn't care. I was in like a robe or a long cardigan and like pajamas with like shoes on. I'm just giving you a package, okay? I'm not staying. So I can't wait to confuse him more since I'm starting testosterone this month. I hope also top surgery eventually, and I'm just gonna mess with be like, you did meet me, because it's true, but I don't think you'll ever connect the dots. And but yeah, so what happened was so what happened is, I don't know what we're gonna do about it, but just like the cops don't want to hear you complain, I don't want to hear you complain. The cops are literally just have to do their thing where they knock and say, hey, is there a dog? Is he outside, and does he need help? And I'm like, no dog outside doesn't need help. Apparently this cop, again, he was trying to be very chummy. It felt sincere. A lot of times the cops are indifferent. This guy seems very sincere. And he goes, yeah, all 13 of your complaints are all dog noise related. There is nothing else, just dog complaints. And I'm like, oh, and again, from one neighbor. So I don't know if the cops have told that neighbor that literally nothing has ever come of it or not. So what I think, what I want to do is I want to write a very passive aggressive note. For those who don't know, passive aggressive isn't violence. I really need you guys to realize that. Please realize what actual passive aggressiveness is, because I watched a movie, awful movie. I don't know if I talked about it. It's a Duff. I always want to say DILF. Not the same thing. The movie. But no, Duff. And it's like, she's passive aggressive. And she knocks something, or like runs into someone. It's like, oh, my bad. That's not really passive aggressive. They did the same thing where it's like, oh, you look so good. And they're like, that's not passive aggressive. Passive aggressive would be like, yeah, it really like highlights your like large hip, because like they're trying on a dress. I think if you play it in a good way, like it really highlights, or like, a good word for then a character trait that they don't like or something. That I feel like could have been more interesting. Or if you're like, oh yeah, that dress really something, like something like that, where you say it in a very nice tone, but you say something really nasty. Passive aggressive. So I think I'm gonna say something very nice, saying, hey, I heard, your complaints. They have deemed nothing wrong 13 times. But, as I think they told you before, but as they told me, you should contact us directly. So if you lost our phone number, here it is. Because I think that would be a perfect way to be like, call us. You want to actually complain about us? Call us. Because again, the cop was there for 10 minutes. well before 10 o'clock. So even if and found nothing. So even if our dogs were outside, they weren't barking. But they weren't. Because they would have if they saw a car just sitting there for 10 minutes. But it's like, if and then sometimes they call directly, like, at a certain time, blah blah. I think the thing is they don't want to call us directly because they call the cops in advance, so they're here at 10 o'clock to try to catch us right up breaking the rules, because after they pointed out to us, like, oh, you're breaking the rules, and we're like, no, we're not. No, we're not. We're well not breaking the law. They went and they looked up the law, actually, and this guy is horrible because he goes to my mom because we live alone, and he thinks I'm a woman, and he goes to my mom and says, do you want me to talk to your husband for you? Because, like, and I'm just like, what the hell? And he went to me, he's like, oh, you're like, maybe I should talk to your dad. And I'm just like, my dad, sure. He lives an hour and a half away. Go ahead. Like, sure. But because I have facial piercings, my family members have facial piercings, ear piercings, tattoos, dyed hair, shaved head. Like, I feel like there's another reason they don't really like us. Mr. Republican, Mr. Gun Owner doesn't like us for being, as I said, alternative. I also meant, you know, LGBT. I'm not straight. I'm not cis. And honestly, the neighbors can. Yeah, no, I didn't know how or what to say, but I was being real chummy. My siblings, when I came in, they're like, what happened to ACAB? I was like, boy, you know I'm gonna smooth this cop to get him on my side and prove that we ain't doing nothing wrong. I'll do anything. I'll be like, Mr. Policeman, I look like a 12-year-old. Well, my face. But yeah, with that, one time my sibling, my eldest sibling, 30 years old, was in line for something, and someone asked them, what high school do you go to? And they had to explain that they're 30 years old. Or almost. Not quite. Yeah, they asked me, the cops asked me how old my neighbor was, and I was like, listen, I can't tell you anything about them. I haven't seen them. So I said older 30s. Apparently they are older than that. I did not know. So if they put that on record, I don't know. Because I didn't know how old they were, because my siblings were like, oh, they have this color hair, and they look like this, and I'm like, I could say that they're white, and that is about it.